Hello, everybody. So I just want to thank Rob because my name's Cedrik Neike. I work for Siemens, and we build industrial tech. We build the old industrial tech, which we need to combine with the new tech or AI Rob just talked about. The thing is just, I don't know if you know Siemens. We are the biggest industrial conglomerate in Europe. We build trains, we build power stations, we build energy distribution systems, we build complete cities, so we make complete cities smart. And we were invented by a startup. If any one of you is a startup creator, 170 years ago, Werner von Siemens invented the electrical principle, if you want, the dynamo principle, and created a company which lasted 170 years. Now, if we look at this, we need to understand how can we use this technology to solve the big problems, and Rob talked about it. Now, I'm going to show you one of the biggest problems we have. I don't know if I get my slides up, probably not. If not, I'll give you sort of the overview. Oops. It doesn't click, so I'll just go through it. So the main thing, or the main problem we have at the moment is that there's 1 billion people which still don't have access to electricity. And by 2040, there's going to be 2 billion more people which are going to be born. If these people, which are coming on, and then we put them to the electrical grid, use the same way electricity which has been produced today, we're really running into trouble, and that's the climate change issue which we have. And the climate change issue, and Facebook just talked about it, the climate change issue is pretty big because the reality of what happens is that it hits you everywhere. It hits you with big sort of storms, typhoons, but this is a photo of my street. It hits you in the street. So the reality is that you just need to understand that in something like 5 years in India, we went from 110 million cars to 210 million cars. In China, where I live in China, in Berlin, in China, within 7 years, the amount of traffic quadrupled. So we have a huge amount of energy which is being sort of produced in the wrong way. So what is the answer? The answer is that we need to look at renewable energy. And the issue with renewable energy is the following, and that's the problem where I need your help. We looked at Germany. If we look at Germany, which is sort of a front runner in terms of using electrical sort of renewable energy, and Portugal is another example. If we look at Germany, the reality is that, if I could go to the next slide. I don't know. All right. So this is a complex slide, but I call it the energy heartbeat of Germany. Germany went from 1990, it had 1,000 power plants, coal, nuclear power plants, to distribute all of the energy around Germany. We now have in Germany 1.7 million power producers. So it is much more decentralized. A lot of people with PV, a lot of wind production. But it creates a huge, huge issue. And you see this issue on this slide. This is the slide if we would use 40% renewables. The red parts are overproduction of energy. The blue parts, and when there's more energy needed than there's being produced with energy production. So what you see, there's a difference between where and when energy is produced. We simulated a full year and a full 24 hours. You see that a lot of energy is being produced in the north, a lot of energy is being consumed in the south. If we look at going to 80% of renewables, really clean energy, this problem is 5 times bigger. So the reality is the heartbeat of energy, which used to be very, very normal, very sort of steady, is becoming super excited, if you want. And that's a real problem because time and space is completely out of whack. And we need to reconcile it. If we can't solve the problem that renewables are putting a lot of sort of issues into the systems, we're going to have blackouts. We're going to have not access to energy anymore. And these are the types of problems which we need to solve. Now, the way we are addressing it at Siemens is we looked at 3 things. First one is decarbonization. We absolutely believe that we need to go into a decarbonized world. We're one of the biggest producers of wind farms. We're one of the biggest producers in this direction. The second thing you need to do, and as I said, if you go from 1,000 power plants to 1.7 million producers to 10 million to 10 billion of producers, you need to look at decentralization. It's like the internet. It goes from central to very decentral. And the only way of dealing with this complexity, and Rob talked about it, is to take digital technology. And that's where we need your help. So there's a couple of things which we need to do for these 3 Ds to be able to address this. The first one, you have to look at yourself. So Siemens, for example, decided that by 2030 we're going to be the first carbon neutral company on Earth, which has 360,000 employees. So we're using all the tech possible to reduce our carbon footprint. The second thing we do is currently our technology is saving 540 million carbon tons of CO2 per year, which is roughly half of Germany and I think 3 or 4 times of what Portugal is producing. It's not enough. We need to save more. And that's why I'm reaching out to all of you, and that's why I'm reaching out to the previous speaker, because how do we do it? We have to take our technology. As I said, we're one of the biggest producers of gas turbines. We are now putting artificial intelligence into the gas turbines. So we have more than 1,000 sensors in the gas turbine to look at how do we optimize basically the NOx reduction. How do we optimize the utilization where you used to do 4 or 5 times a year. You used to sort of optimize this gas turbine. We're doing now the artificial intelligence to do this more aggressively. So we're decarbonizing ourselves. We're making our products more decarbonization ready, if you want. These are the first 2 things. The third thing, and this is also very important if you're building a startup, we're looking at these decentralization, which is massive. And we work with I just came back from New York. I work with a startup, or Siemens works with a startup called LO3, 20 people only. So these 20 people in Brooklyn was hit by Sandy, a big storm, which took a blackout out of Brooklyn. And they said, we're going to change this. And what they take is they're building a peer-to-peer network using blockchain. They're rewriting blockchain to be able to exchange energy. So my energy, which I'm producing on my solar rooftop, I can exchange it with my neighbor, which needed for my air conditioning, for example. I can exchange it with the local shop, which can trade with it. Using blockchain, we now can look at every electron and understand, is it a green electron? Is it a carbon electron? Is it being produced around the corner? And we're building a peer-to-peer trading system. So not only do we optimize the way we're consuming or decarbonization, but we're making energy trackable, which hasn't existed up to now. The next thing we do is that we need to store this energy. As you've seen, there is days where there's a lot of wind and this energy goes to waste. In Germany alone, 1 billion euros of clean energy is not being used, completely wasted. I came back from Australia just now. Australia is a blessed country. They have the biggest carbon, or if you, how do you call it, the production of natural gas, the production of coal. But they also have something which is pretty unique. They have an amazing amount of sun and wind. And the reality is we looked and said, could we capture this sun and wind? Just to give you an overview, Munich, which is the sunniest place in Germany, more or less, is half as good as Tasmania in terms of sun intensity. And Tasmania is seen as the worst place in Australia in terms of sun intensity. So if you could harness the sun, if you could harness the wind, you could do something great. And we're building basically a hydrolyzer. So we're taking water and splitting it into hydrogen and also oxygen to be able to build completely green hydrogen, something which hasn't happened before. Before, when you build hydrogen, you need to put a lot of carbon into it. So we're building capabilities to go from 1.25 megawatts to 100 megawatts to really build hydrogen in a completely different way. So we're solving really the problem of storage of green energy to be reutilized in a different sort of environment. Now, we're starting with ourselves, we're building greener technology, we're working with startups to build new business model, we're storing energy. The biggest place, if you want to solve the carbon problem, is you go to cities. 70% of worldwide population will live in cities. And we need to start to understand how can we make these cities smarter to be able to save the carbon footprint. And we're building a lot of technology to be able to do so, and we're starting with places like Lisbon. If you go around, I don't know if has any one of you tried the bikes, the e-bikes you have around it? We are co-producing it. The idea is that we need to make these cities intelligent. So if you basically are looking at the cities, conserving energy, building capabilities, such as the blockchain example we have, or build these e-bikes, you start to reduce the energy footprint which we put forward. So I said three things. The first thing, if we want to really sort of address the carbon footprint, we need to start with ourselves. Each one of you needs to start with themselves. Second one, you need to look at your product and see, can I make this product more effective? Third one, what is the new business model to build peer-to-peer models so that energy which is being produced is being exchanged in a more efficient way, and we can trace green energy differently than coal energy. We then really sort of look at storing the energy so that we can use it in different time frames, and then we're applying it to the places where we live and make it more efficient. And that's really sort of the key thing on how we use industrial technology and bring it into the forefront of the future. And an example I want to give you is our technologist has looked at it and says, at the moment, the energy systems are pretty dumb. Only 10% of all substations, for example, which is in the energy grid, are connected. If we start to connect all of the grid, and every one of you starts to be a prosumer, producing and consuming energy and trading with somebody else, we're going to create more data than anywhere else, because at every microsecond, the sun is different, the wind is different, and you need to make a lot of decisions. There's not enough compute power to be able, as I showed you at the beginning, to stabilize this heartbeat, which becomes more and more irregular. So we need to look at new tech to do it. Artificial intelligence is one, but if I talk to my central technology development, they're looking at quantum computing. They're looking at subatomic calculation, where you have 0 and 1 at the same time, to be able to have this nonlinear problem being solved. So what I was trying to all bring together is the reality is Siemens started 170 years ago, and this is one of the first products Siemens built. It's called Victoria. So Mr. Werner von Siemens built an electric car for his wife 140 years or 150 years ago, and she loved it, right? It didn't smell, it was very good, it only had 20 minutes of battery life. But he had this idea on how can I use electricity and change the way basically ironing is done. How can I build the first electronic sort of rail track? The question is we are putting, as Siemens, we have more than 5 billion of R&D resources we've put into making our products more green and putting them in the right direction, but we cannot do it alone. And my couple of minutes here was to say, if you're a chemist and you work with hydrogen, please talk to us. If you have a fintech and you're building blockchain and you want to apply it somewhere else, talk to us. If you're doing artificial intelligence, if you're a regulator, if you're a customer, we need to work together, because the problem we have are amazingly big. And we're starting to do it, and we put all our efforts to do what we call business to society, to come back and solve those problems. Our product, to make them as green as possible and use as much as possible sort of decarbonized environment. We will need all of our help to achieve this. I have exactly the same as my email address, my Twitter, or my LinkedIn, or you come to the MindSphere Lounge if you want to work with us to be able to address this very difficult problem, which is this increasingly unstable heartbeat of a greener electric planet. Thank you.